I am here today, and today we are going to be focusing on some of the biggest challenges that most of us face when we are working on Salesforce projects. Salesforce projects can be very, very tricky. And I think what makes it worse is when people just assume that because it's Salesforce, it's going to be easy, and in the end, it's not easy. The user interface might look simple. The business leaders who think they know what they want at the beginning of a project might make it seem like the project is very simple and straightforward. But in the end, it is typically anything but simple and straightforward. Usually there is far more complexity than meets the eye. And what we're going to unpack today are some of the challenges that typically come up when it comes to managing Salesforce projects and how we can avoid some of the most common problems that typically appear when working on Salesforce projects. So first off, let's talk a little bit about, for those of you who don't know who I am, my name is David Giller. I am a Salesforce trainer and consultant. I work with companies who are looking to get the most out of their Salesforce investment. And what we're going to be talking about today is, first of all, why is it even so important to understand some of the common pitfalls that happen when we're working on Salesforce projects? And what I'll say is this: similar to any other aspect of life, if we don't realize what we've got wrong, if we do something wrong, if we don't realize like what went wrong, we don't know how to avoid the same mishap from occurring again in the future. So we need to learn from those experiences. And what I'm trying to do in this video is to actually help you by helping you to avoid some of the common problems and pitfalls and snafus and challenges that I and others have experienced before you. So you don't need to actually experience a car crash in order to learn the best practices on how to drive in order to avoid a car crash. All you really have to do is learn from those people who have done it before in order to see like what's going on and how you can best avoid some of those challenges. So what you can expect to learn from this session is basically, just like I mentioned, what are the common pitfalls that typically occur and what are the practical things that you can do in order to avoid some of these challenges. So without further delay, let's talk a little bit about the common pitfalls that happen in Salesforce projects. And no matter how big of a disaster a project might be, and sometimes they are disasters, sadly, usually it boils down to these 5 items that you see on my screen right now. The first is inadequate planning and scoping. And what do we mean by that? Well, inadequate planning and scoping basically means that we assumed that, or someone assumed that the project is going to be smaller than it actually is. Someone assumed that the requirements are very clear and straightforward, when in the end they are anything but clear and straightforward. And just lots of assumptions are being made along the way, and it's going to really cause tremendous problems for everybody involved because we make a lot of assumptions. We don't consider all of the business requirements. We don't consider all of the use cases. We don't consider all of the users who are involved in a particular issue. And it can just really cause havoc for the entire project. Poor data quality and data management. How many times as a Salesforce admin have we been in a situation where folks basically say, oh yeah, just take this spreadsheet and just upload it into Salesforce? What about the fact that some of the data is outdated? What about the fact that some of the data is duplicative even within itself, let alone duplicative with the data that's already in the system? What happens when the data is half-baked and it's missing information? We only have the city and state. We don't have the street address. Like, what do you want to do about that? Well, if nobody cares about the quality of the data, if nobody wants to deal with the quality of the data, and most of the time people are going to say like, oh yeah, we'll deal with it later. They never do. No. And then in the end, they look in the system once the data has been imported. They look in the system and then they say, oh yeah, the data sucks. Therefore, the system sucks. It has nothing to do with the system. You put garbage data in, you got garbage out, so the system is useless. If you put in all kinds of duplicate records, and nobody knows which record they're supposed to be looking at in order to actually follow up with the prospect or customer. So poor data quality is a very, very common issue. Now, by the way, when we have integrations, and everybody loves to talk about integrations, and I'm not at all trying to say that we should not leverage integrations when it comes to any type of a Salesforce project. But when it comes to integrations, one of the things that most people don't want to focus on is, well, what happens if the other system that we're connecting Salesforce to, what if that system has garbage data in it, and we're feeding information from that other system into Salesforce, and now we're getting cluttered, garbage, inaccurate, duplicative, outdated data from the other system into Salesforce, or the other way around. And by the way, a lot of times that happens. The simplest, easiest, most overlooked way that it happens at massive scale is when companies connect Salesforce to Outlook or Google. And then your Google contacts, your Outlook contacts, your Google Calendar, your Outlook calendar, all of the stuff that's on there just gets synced because nobody wants to think about it. Everyone says, yeah, just turn it on. It's an integration. Yeah, turn it on. It'll be great. Well, then what happens when all of your friends and relatives that are in your Outlook contacts now appear in Salesforce? And which account are they associated with? And a lot of times people have some pretty private information in the contact records in Outlook or in the Google contacts. And that information is getting passed over into Salesforce. And then what happens when nobody thinks about the sharing rules, and more people than should be system admins, where they have view all, modify all data. So now everyone in the company can see all of your personal contacts that were in your Outlook just 10 minutes prior. So huge disasters that come out of not thinking through about not only the data quality, but also managing the data. Inadequate user adoption. So a lot of times people don't think about neither the user adoption issues nor the training issues, and they go closely hand in hand. They're related to each other, where if we don't focus on user adoption, on making sure that the team is actually able to use and can use and does use the system that we spent so much money on, from a licensing perspective, from a customization perspective, from a data importing perspective, where we spend so much time and money and effort in setting up this system, and then for whatever reason, they're still using spreadsheets. So user adoption is low. A lot of times they were never trained in the first place. They don't see the value in using the system. They don't know how to find the records that they need to find. They don't know how to update the records that they need to update. There's so much clutter on the screens because nobody thought through, as I mentioned a moment ago, the poor data quality and data management issues. So they see more records than they need to see. When they look at a specific record, they see more information than they need to see. And it just makes it completely overwhelming, totally daunting. So even if users were trained, I can guarantee they're not going to want to use the system. They will find the every opportunity that they can to use Post-it notes, paper notebooks, clipboards, spreadsheets, anything else other than Salesforce, let alone if they were not trained. And I can't tell you how often I see where huge projects, hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars are spent on a Salesforce initiative, and then training is an afterthought. You can pretty much guarantee that user adoption is going to be terrible. And if user adoption is terrible, the data quality is terrible. And if the data quality is terrible, why on earth do we have Salesforce? What is the point? if the data is junk and if the people aren't using it. It makes no sense. The next issue that we commonly see of why Salesforce projects typically fail is because of a lack of stakeholder engagement and a lack of communication with stakeholders. Now, by the way, when we say stakeholders, I'm not only talking about the people who are paying for this project to happen. Usually those are the champions. They are a stakeholder, but they are not the end-all and be-all of stakeholders. Who are the stakeholders? Well, if we're talking about rolling out Salesforce for the team of sales people, the people who are developing, nurturing the prospects, turning them into customers, creating and managing the deals and closing the deals, those are the stakeholders. And I can't tell you how many times I myself am involved in a project. And it's the folks in IT who say, no, you don't need to talk to the folks in sales. They don't know what they're doing. We'll tell you what they need. We work closely with them. We will tell you what they need. And they can't describe the sales process. And if they can't describe the sales process and they can't talk about the pain points that the folks in sales are experiencing when they are finding the leads, when they are nurturing the leads, when they are qualifying the leads, when they are working the deals, when they are following up on the deals, if they can't speak to any of those pain points, your stakeholders, the people who are expected to use the system, the people who have skin in the game as it relates to this system, the people who are impacted by this project, those are your stakeholders. Guess what? Your stakeholders even include the prospects and the customers themselves. Because if the employees cannot find the accurate, most up-to-date information about the customers and the prospects, or the pricing information about how much certain products and services cost for those prospects and customers, if the employees can't find it, it impacts the prospects and the customers. And if they're so unimpressed with the service that they're getting or the inaccurate information they're getting, they're going to go elsewhere. So your stakeholders absolutely include the users who are expected to use the system, the managers of those users who are expected to use the system, as well as the external customers. Now, I'm not necessarily saying that you need to include your external customers when you're rolling out Salesforce internally. It's not that you need to include the external customers in your conversations. They don't need to be doing UAT testing, no, but we need to have in mind what is it that our customers expect from this initiative, from this project that we are working on. And you better believe it, the end users must be included in the conversations. You must identify from them what are your business processes, what are the pain points that you are struggling with today, where hopefully this project will help alleviate some of those pain points. So stakeholder engagement is absolutely critical. More often than not, it is missing from many Salesforce projects, and you can pretty much guarantee that those projects will fail. In other words, you might pop the champagne and celebrate, yeah, we're done, we reached the finish line, we're live in production, but no one's going to use the system. Pretty much guaranteed. So not only do you need to keep them engaged, you need to have the proper type of communication that's happening with the stakeholders on a regular basis throughout, so that you can show them here's what's going on. You can get their feedback. You need to have feedback loops to get feedback from those stakeholders to make sure that whatever it is that you're working on actually helps them, actually solves the problem. You need to show them here's what we did based on the prior conversations, and here's how it's going to help you. And not only will that open up the lines of communication for them to say, oh wait, we just realized, okay, we didn't mention it before, we just realized there's another use case where we need to think about how will we handle those scenarios, but it will also get them so excited that it's going to help lay the appropriate groundwork for the user adoption, because before you even go live, just by them seeing a demo, just by them playing around in a sandbox with the new enhancements that you showed them to relieve some of the problems that they're experiencing today, they're going to go back to their colleagues and they're going to be like, holy cow, this project is so cool. I can't wait for it to go live. That's going to help with the user adoption. That's going to help with the training, because those users are actually going to come to you saying, by the way, can you show me again? How do I create those list views? How do I create a new opportunity? How do I show all of the opportunities that are expected to close this week that I haven't worked on yet? Any of those kinds of scenarios. So lack of stakeholder engagement and communication is a big one. Next, customization and configuration challenges. And you might be surprised, this is the last one. So, and by the way, in terms of priority, these are in order of priority. So customization and configuration challenges talks to the technical issues, the technical limitations, the technical challenges associated with the actual project that we're working on. And you might be thinking like, wait a minute, why is that last? How could it possibly be that the other issues happen more frequently and are more impactful to the project than the technical challenges? And I'll tell you why. If you don't have stakeholders properly engaged, if nobody cares about the data quality or managing the data, if you don't have a clear guidelines on what the project scope is all about, then yeah, it doesn't really matter what you configure. And nobody's going to care if, let's say, the configuration doesn't match with what was actually expected, because people aren't really engaged. They just want to know that the project is done. They don't even care about the actual details of the project. But that's not to say that it doesn't happen. It absolutely still does happen. And why does it happen? Well, it happens for a lot of different reasons, where we have configuration challenges. A lot of times we have configuration challenges and customization challenges simply because the expectations were not realistic. I mean, we let people dream. Absolutely. We have brainstorming sessions where we ask people, I ask people myself when I'm working on a project, if you had the magic wand, what would you actually want? And I'll give you an example where what comes back is sometimes a little bit shocking and also completely unrealistic, and I have to sort of bring the client back to reality. A lot of times I will turn to the sales leader, the CEO of a business, a senior leader within the organization, and say, okay, what is it that you want? So like they might look at the homepage and they might say, oh, I really don't like the homepage. Can you change it up for me? Can you make it more practical? Okay, what is it that you want? If you had the magic wand, how would you set up the homepage? And a lot of times they say the following. I want on the homepage, I want to be able to see everything. I want to see every record that exists in the system. I want to see every note, every comment, every logged phone call. I want to see everything on the homepage. Essentially what they're saying is they want it to be like a single tab of a single spreadsheet. Everything, it should just keep scrolling and scrolling, and it should be as wide as the ocean in terms of how long you have to scroll to the right, as well as how long you have to scroll down in order to see all of the details. And a lot of times I turn to them and I say, well, that is completely not practical, besides the fact that it's just not doable. Salesforce is a 3-dimensional database, and basically what you're saying is you wanted to see it as a 1-dimensional sheet, and that is completely not practical. Let me ask you this. Have you ever logged on to Amazon or Netflix or Walmart.com or HomeDepot.com or even walked into a supermarket or a department store? Have you ever gone into any of those kinds of places and everything is just on one wall or one page? Have you ever seen any supermarket anywhere in the world where instead of having aisles, they just have one wall, ceiling to floor, wall to wall, every single product, so that you don't have, this way you don't, it's so easy. You don't have to go through aisles. Everything is right there. Have you ever seen that? No. When you go into Amazon, even when you're looking at a product, do you see every single review, every comment, every related product all on one page? No, you have to click into it because it's 3-dimensional. It's too much information to possibly put on one page. It is completely overwhelming if we were to do that. So you don't want that. So a lot of times what they're asking for is just not practical. It's not actually going to solve a problem. So basically, once I walk them through that, I essentially ask them, what is it that you really need? So you're saying you want to be able to see everything. Why? And usually they'll say something like, well, I want to see what my team is up to. If you want to see what your team is up to, let's narrow that down a little bit further. Maybe what they really mean is, I want to see all of the opportunities that were created or updated in the last week, and maybe by whom. Maybe I want to see all of the leads or contacts or accounts that were created in the last 7 or 14 days. Maybe I want to see all of the activities that are open and not yet closed, and maybe they're overdue, and I want them grouped by the person that the tasks were assigned to. So once you start asking these questions, then you're going to get some more realistic answers of what type of information can we provide these people to be actionable, to be meaningful for them, instead of just blindly giving them whatever it is that they're asking for, because what they're asking for absolutely makes no sense. And it's just not doable. Anyway, now that you have an understanding of the common pitfalls, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to show you now how we're going to unpack how we can avoid a lot of these issues. So the first thing that we need to do is, in order to avoid having vague requirements and vague project scope on what the project is all about, we need to conduct a thorough needs assessment before even starting the project. What does that mean? It means we need to identify the goals and objectives for the organization. We need to determine what is the budget and what resources do we have to work with. And we need to also get an understanding of the organization's readiness for change. What does that mean? That basically means that if we're trying to take on this new initiative, maybe the new initiative is to revamp, to streamline, simplify, automate the way we're working on, whether it's a lead management or managing the pipeline in Salesforce. That means the way that we're doing it today is not working. The way we're doing it today needs some improvement. It means we need to make some change to the way we're doing things today. So changing it in the system is one thing. Is the organization or the people actually ready to absorb, to own the new change, the new way that we are proposing doing things? That is the real question. And it's possible that they're not. But that does not mean that your project is dead in the water. You need to address it. That's through change management. And by the way, I'll give you the abbreviated version of how to deal with change management. I actually have a full course on it. But the abbreviated version of change management is you need to position yourself as essentially a corporate therapist and work with the people who need the change, who are looking for or who are impacted by this change. And we need to get a sense from them of what is working, what is not working, what are they afraid of, what is it that they want to achieve in the future in terms of the improvements, the enhancements that they're looking for within the organization, in order to make sure that their needs are met and that the change is one that has more pros than cons associated with it. By the way, you're going to see in the footer on this page and a bunch of pages that follow, you're going to see a URL. I do have a course called Project Management Secrets, in which I unpack all of these issues and I walk you through exactly how to handle from wing to wing everything about managing a Salesforce project. I also give you a ton of templates and cheat sheets and email templates associated with every step of managing a Salesforce project. So I'm giving you the URL. You can check it out on your own. I'll show you a little bit of it at the end. Number 2, how to avoid common pitfalls in a Salesforce project. Well, you need to also create a detailed project plan. Having a detailed project plan gives you a concrete document where, if you did the steps talked about previously, where you did an assessment of what are the goals and objectives of the project, what kind of budget are we working with, what kind of resources are we working with, is the organization ready for change? If we're not ready for change, what are the issues, what are the obstacles, with whom are those obstacles? If you've done all of those things, then you have enough information where you can start putting together a project plan, where you have now a document where that document will help you define the scope and the requirements of the project. So everybody has a clear goal of, this is what we're marching towards. This is what this particular project entails. This is what we hope to achieve by the time this project is actually done. We're now able to, within that document, we're able to set a realistic timeline associated to, here is what we're going to achieve, and here's when we expect to achieve it. Here's when we expect to have all of the different milestones accomplished. And we're also even able to assign roles and responsibilities within the project plan to help everyone clearly identify who is responsible for doing what as it relates to this project. Just the exercise of having that clearly written out on paper will help everyone involved clearly understand here are our marching orders. Here is a document that encapsulates what we expect to have by the time this project is done, who is doing what, when is it going to happen. Next, we need to establish effective communication channels. Once we know what we're going to do, who's going to be doing what resources we have, what timeline we have associated to the project, we need to have, it is so incredibly important to have open lines of communication between not only everybody involved in the project, all of the business folks who are impacted by this project, all of the business folks who have some skin in the game, the stakeholders, the subject matter experts, the project champions, everyone involved within the organization needs to have some level of communication to get updates on here's what's going on. You need to, as the project management team, as the person who's responsible for managing this project, for leading and facilitating the project, you need to know when you are getting the feedback, the insights, the pain points, the business requirements, the business processes from the people who are expected to use the system, from the people who are expected to benefit from this system once it is live. So you need to have all of these communication channels open. So you need to know, who is it that needs to be informed? What is it that they need to be informed of? Through what channel are you going to be communicating with them? Is it once a week in-person meetings? Is it going to be posts on a Slack channel? Is it going to be emails? Is it going to be all of the above? Like, what is it exactly? Is it just going to be a check-in, or are you going to have actual working sessions with these people? And you need to also identify the potential roadblocks and risks by having ongoing open communication with everyone involved, all of the people who are expected to benefit from this project. And it allows you the forum to not only share as the person who's running the project, to share with the stakeholders, the subject matter experts, here are some of the challenges, here are some of the risks, here are some of the problems that we're encountering. We hope to overcome them, just keeping you posted on here's where we stand with some of these issues. It also allows them to give you feedback on potentially new risks that you did not know about, potentially new roadblocks. You might have a meeting with them to show them, by the way, we're working on a DocuSign digital signature project for some of your templates. And here we are. Here's a walkthrough of some of the things that we're working on, some of the templates we already set up for you. And the people who gave you those templates say, oh yeah, this is great. But by the way, legal just said that they're about to totally revamp those documents. So they might be the ones telling you, oh, but we've got some risks here. We've got some challenges. We've got some roadblocks. We might not get those documents for another 2 weeks, and we're expected to go live tomorrow. So you don't know what you don't know. By having open lines of communication, it helps to facilitate, to make sure that everyone is on the same page, that everyone is working together. It helps eliminate finger pointing. It helps avoid folks saying, oh, this is your fault, it's because of what you did. No, we're all on the same team. We're all allies. We're working together in a collaborative way to help the organization as a whole overcome some of the challenges that we have as a team. So having open lines of communication is so incredibly important. And if you don't have that, basically everything will break down in your entire project. Number 4. Use any. It does not even matter which one. And now, by the way, as a technology geek, I've used so many different project management tools over time. I do have the shiny object syndrome once in a while, so I get caught up in, oh, this looks better, maybe I should use this tool. So it does not really matter which one you use, so long as you use any type of project management software to help not only you as the person managing the project, but also to help others to see, to visualize, even in a graphical way, to capture in one centralized place, so you're not looking in archived emails like, wait, where was that attachment where they explained what they needed? Use any type of software that is meant for project management. Now, some tools that I will recommend include Monday.com, Asana, Trello, Jira. Another one some of you might not have heard of that is incredibly powerful is called Nifty. Nifty PM as in project management. It doesn't. All of these tools have very similar functionality. They all have lots of integrations and all different kinds of automation that you can set up. There are different price points and different user interfaces involved. And in the end, like I said before, it really does not even matter which one you use, so long as you use any type of project management software, it's going to help you dramatically to keep an eye on what's going on the project and to even collaborate internally as a team on any project. I see Tanisha's asking a question, should we become experts in these tools? No, you don't need to become experts in these tools. So what I'll say is this, if your organization does not have any tool today, first, what I'll suggest is go with the lowest price point that you're comfortable with. So a lot of these tools will offer a free version based on the not only time, so like free 14-day, 30-day trial. A lot of them will offer a free version like only if it's one user. So you might only need for one user and that would be fine. But the other thing I'll say is that as you start playing around with start using any tool for project management, what you're going to start seeing for yourself the things that you like or don't like as it relates to the user interface, as it relates to the way some of the nuances of the way some of the integrations work. Let's say you want, for example, an integration with Slack. Every time a particular task is completed or every time a particular task is assigned to you, like let's say a notification should go into Slack. So you might have some preferences as it relates to how some of those tools work. I would say as an entry starting point, if you are working with zero budget, I would start with Trello. So there's a free version of Trello. It is incredibly powerful. There are tons of YouTube videos of people in all different kinds of industries showing how to use Trello. And one of the reasons why I'm suggesting it does not even matter which one you use is because you're going to see that there are so many similarities among these different tools that once you start getting comfortable with one, those concepts will still apply similarly to when you first learn how to drive and you learn, okay, there's this concept of windshield wipers. There's this concept of putting it in park and like, how does that work exactly? And once you realize how it works in the next car, the knobs might be different. The placement of some of these features might be different, but the core fundamentals are still there and they still work in a very similar, nearly identical way. So, but either way, using a project management tool really changes the game because in the end, it's about having a centralized place where you can store all of the information about like even what is the project charter? What is it that this project is really all about? Where do we have the documentation of what the team expects to get out of this project? Or let's say the surveys that we conducted with the team before we even started the project, or the pricing information, let's say it's a DocuSign project, the pricing information about DocuSign, or where did we put the actual templates that we expect to integrate with DocuSign? Someone emailed it to me, where the heck did it go? So just by having any centralized place where you can store all of these things, let alone the tasks, the people who are involved, the milestones for the project, the decisions that were made, any centralized place is better than nothing. So very, very important. Okay, next. Another way to avoid common pitfalls. Hiring a Salesforce consultant or expert. Now, I am not saying this to try to convince you to hire me or the Brainy team to help you with your Salesforce project. But what I am calling out is, I'll give you an example for myself. If I have an issue with my car not working properly, or my hot water heater or my air conditioning unit is not working properly, of course, I can go to YouTube, I can look at a user manual and try to figure out how do I accomplish whatever it is that I need or want to do associated to that problem or that issue or that project that I'm working on. But if I've got a lot of other responsibilities that I need to focus on, and this is the kind of thing that not only have I not changed a hot water heater in my home or done whatever it is that needs to be done on my car. Not only have I not done that before, I don't really expect to do that many times in my life. So is this really a skill that I need to know, that I need to build out for myself? Not really. And would it be beneficial to the company that we bring in someone who has done it before, who has worked on some of these challenges before, who has more experience in navigating maybe some of the internal corporate politics that are involved with this particular project or initiative? A lot of times that by itself is worth its weight in gold, because this way you, as the internal expert, can help gather the troops and gather the information and get the feedback from the internal team on here's what we need for this project, here's what the team thinks of the demo, the walkthrough, etc. But then you have this other external consultant or expert that comes in to help you navigate through some of the bigger challenges associated with it, so that this way you are not staring like a deer in the headlights, trying to manage this project, while at the same time you have people emailing you or texting you saying, I can't log in. Can you reset my password? Oh, here's another spreadsheet. Can you upload this spreadsheet into Salesforce? And yeah, I need it by the end of the day, while you're trying to juggle some of these other initiatives that are far more impactful for the entire organization. So something that you might want to consider. Next, we talked about user adoption and how closely related it is to training. I'm shocked every time I see it. I should not be shocked, but I am shocked every time I see it, where companies invest so much money in Salesforce licenses, in customizing Salesforce, in migrating the data to Salesforce, and then everything about end user training is like an afterthought, and there's no budget associated with it. There's no initiative associated with it. We think, oh yeah, we'll just send them a PDF. We'll send them a PowerPoint. We'll have a 1-hour walkthrough for them. Let me tell you this. A 1-hour walkthrough of Salesforce is not even enough time to explain the features that are available on the homepage. It's not even enough time to describe to people how to use search, how to use some of the global actions, how to work with list views, or even to understand the differences between some of the different tabs that you have on Salesforce, let alone any components that you have on the homepage. 1 hour won't cut it. And a lot of Salesforce admins have never put together a curriculum for training end users. They have no idea how to go about training end users, let alone they don't know how much time to allocate, or they're being bullied. The Salesforce admin who worked on the project is being bullied by senior leaders within the organization who say, the system is intuitive, my people are smart, they will figure it out. They don't have time to sit and listen to you explaining every darn feature that's available in the system. And you're then caught with like, what the heck am I supposed to do? And you're powerless to do anything about it. But what happens anyway? So, okay, you give up that fight. What happens anyway? The system is live, and people were not trained on how to use it, and people are putting call logs and notes in the description field instead of using the activities functionality. People are putting contacts on the account record instead of actually creating contact records for them. People are putting opportunity information maybe in the activities, in the description of an activity, because they were never trained on what to do. They don't understand the difference between a lead, a contact, an account, and an opportunity. They have no idea what's what. So they're very lost. What you need to do is you need to put together, and by the way, this is another reason why having an external consultant, a third party, some other stranger come into the mix to basically tell that senior leader, sorry, that's not going to fly. This is not going to work. And if you expect your people to be trained, then we need to do the following, whatever it might be, in order to get them properly trained on using the system appropriately. So in order to put together a training plan for your end users, you need to, first of all, you need to train them on how to use Salesforce effectively. Not only do you need to give them that initial training when they're first introduced to Salesforce or first introduced to the enhancements that you're setting up in Salesforce, they also need ongoing training. Because guess what? There are new features, new enhancements are coming out all the time. New features, new enhancements that you are introducing all the time. Updates to the page layout. Validation rules, automation that you're introducing on a regular basis, new record types that you might be introducing on a regular basis. And if the team was not trained to know how to do it, they go to create a new contact and they see new record types. They're like, I have no idea what the heck this is. I just keep choosing this one. I keep choosing other because they don't know what to do. So you need to provide ongoing training for people so that they know how to use all of the ongoing features that keep coming out. And Monica, I see your comment over here about using the guidance center. Yes, it can be very helpful by using in-app guidance. It can be very helpful. But at the same time, so when you have small incremental changes, in-app guidance is probably best suited for that. When you have new user training where folks don't know anything about how to use Salesforce, having all of these wizards, all of these pop-ups come up all over the place is just going to feel daunting and overwhelming, because to the user, they're going to feel like, I just need to create a contact. I don't even know where to go. I keep seeing these pop-ups and it's distracting, and I think I should go here. I'm a smart person. I should be able to figure it out. And they close all of the prompts and they just do their own thing, and then they mess it up and then they get frustrated. So, been there, done that. Next, you need to provide actionable tips to help the people who are using the system achieve better outcomes in their Salesforce projects. So this is in-app guidance comes in. Okay, let's talk about some best practices for Salesforce projects. You need to, I'm basically summing up what we talked about already. You need to start with some clear project goals and objectives. You need to create a detailed project plan with timelines and milestones. Now, by the way, if any of this sounds overwhelming or intimidating, because for a lot of people, you might be watching this and you might feel like, yeah, duh, that I get all of that, but how do I do it? Those are all of the things that I cover in my course to show you and teach you, because there's a lot that goes into it. And that's where I try to help you accelerate the process by giving you templates that you can get started with. You don't have to use any of the templates, but basically I teach you and explain, here's how you go about doing all of these things. Here's how you, here are some of the common pitfalls that you might encounter when trying to do this thing, and here's how you address them. So I try to walk you through all of these different nuances to make it even more actionable. But either way, in order to make the most out of your Salesforce projects, you start with some clear project goals and objectives. You create a detailed project plan with timelines and milestones. Involve your stakeholders early. You don't start bringing them into the loop on a project when you're about to go live. When it's time to do UAT testing, that's not when you should first be introducing your stakeholders to the project that you're working on, because it's going to be too late. And that's when you're going to realize that what you want them to do UAT testing on is not even a match for the way they do things or what they need from this particular project or from the system. You need to assign roles and responsibilities to the people who are involved in the initiative. You need to establish effective communication channels, and you need to regularly review progress and make some of the necessary adjustments. I see here that Tanisha has a comment, is creating, let's move that over here, is creating the project plan similar to a roadmap if what they refuse to and what if they refuse to give helpful input? That is a great question, Tanisha. So the project plan basically outlines, here's what we expect to do, expect to accomplish, expect to have for this particular project. Here's what we expect to experience when this project is done. Here's who is involved in the project, and it gives high-level milestones of time, like the timestamps of here's what we expect to achieve at different points in time as it relates to the project. But then as we get more granular in the details, we might have tasks with some specific due dates. Those would not necessarily go into the project plan. Those would go into the project timeline, which could be incorporated into the project plan, but usually is not, because that's more in the nitty-gritty details. There was a follow-up question and it fell out of my head for a moment. What if they refuse to give helpful input? This is a big one, and I'm going to show you what to do about that. So this is when it comes to gathering business requirements and you're just not getting the proper feedback, the proper inputs from people when you need to hear from them in terms of what they need and what they want from this particular project. That is a very, very common issue. It is a huge, huge problem, and I'm going to show you a little bit more about that in a moment. Thank you, Maria. I just saw Maria's comment over here about my templates. Okay, so what I want to show you over here is I've got this course and it's called Project Management Secrets. And in Project Management Secrets, I'm actually going to show you, give me one second over here. Okay, so what you see over here is for students of this course, and you can see here is the full curriculum, and you can see that there are not only video lessons according to video lessons for each lesson, but you can also see that I'm giving you, I just randomly clicked on any lesson, and you can see all of the notes. So you don't, I'm trying to make it easy for you, so you don't even have to take notes. I mean, you're welcome to, but you really don't even have to take notes when you're taking this course. So you can see, for example, when we're talking about, defining the project, what is the goal, some common misconceptions about project goals. And let's talk about what is the problem statement. How do you formulate a problem statement? Here are characteristics of a good problem statement. What does success look like? How do we know that we're done? How do we define the scope? So I'm giving you all of these insights and details right here. But the other thing that I'm going to show you is that as it relates to people who take this course, I'm also giving you, you can see I have all of these email templates for announcement emails, marketing agenda emails, meeting recap emails, business requirements gathering, invite emails. So when you're inviting folks to the meeting where you're going to share with them here, we need to meet in order for me to get the business requirements from you. So I'm giving you all of these email templates, and I'm also giving you over here, you can see worksheets and templates where I'm giving you hyperlinks where you can download templates for tons of different use cases for managing essentially every aspect of a Salesforce project. Let's go back to, it was Tanisha's question on what happens when you don't get the appropriate information. I encourage you to visit Brainy8 Academy. So it's brainy8.academy. And that's where you're going to see, I have some also completely free cheat sheets and downloadable resources to help you. This is such a big problem where you can see that I created a bunch of free resources to help you make progress as it relates to, you see here, like effortless business requirements gathering and winning over uncooperative stakeholders. This happens all the time. It is incredibly painful when it does happen, but it absolutely happens all the time. And it is a real challenge. And if you don't address it, your project will be just stuck, paralyzed. And I want you to make progress on your projects. I don't want you to be stuck. Okay, Lisa's got a question. Let's put it on the screen over here. Do you recommend learning Scrum? Do you recommend the use of user stories since people learn differently? So, Lisa, yeah, the short answer is yes to everything. And when I say that, learning any type of, if your organization already uses Scrum and leverages some of the terminology and methodologies associated with Scrum, then I would say 100%, absolutely, you should learn Scrum. If not, then I would say learn any project management methodology. It does not necessarily matter which one. I'm going to use an analogy here. It's sort of like if someone says, hey, I really want to lose weight before, let's say, before summertime or before an upcoming wedding. Should I go on the grapefruit diet or the Atkins diet or the sugar-free diet or whatever? And what I'm basically trying to say is it does not even matter which diet you adopt, so long as you choose any diet that will help you make progress, because in the end, the core fundamental principles really are the same, which is bringing it back to project management, which is identifying what is the problem that we're looking to solve within the context of this particular project. Who are the stakeholders? What is the scope of the project? What is it that's needed? What is expected for this project? Who has what level of role or responsibility when it comes to this project? And then how do we move the needle to actually do the things that need to be done in order to make this project a success? So one way of doing it is through Scrum. There's absolutely nothing wrong with Scrum. I've adopted many of the methodologies associated with Scrum myself, but you don't necessarily have to. So again, any project management methodology that you want to adopt will help you to make progress. I don't want you to get too caught up with any particular methodology if your company is agnostic to like different methodologies, because with any of these, you're going to have certain terminology that might come into play, and you might start. I don't want you to fall into a trap of using some of the terminology with other colleagues. They're going to be like, what the heck are you talking about? Scrum Master? Who's the Scrum Master? What? So I don't want you to sort of fall into that trap. But there's nothing wrong with that. So one of your follow-up questions, Lisa, was recommend the use of, it was actually question number 2, the use of user stories. Yes, user stories help, but here's the trap that I have found when it comes to user stories. When it comes to user stories, I have found that trying to get the business folks to help with crafting a user story, more often than not, it falls on one extreme, either one extreme of being so incredibly vague or so incredibly detailed to the point where you don't need to spend that much time going through the detail. For example, vague. I need to be able to capture all the information necessary in order to qualify a lead. As a business development rep, I need to be able to talk to a lead and capture all of the necessary details. What the heck does that even mean? What are the data points that you need to capture? And they won't tell you, because a lot of times they don't know themselves, or because they think that you have mind reading capabilities and you should automatically know what they need to capture. So it ends up becoming, now I have no hesitation following up with these people saying, okay, so if that was a spreadsheet, or if, let's make believe before the use of computers, we're talking about triplicate carbon paper forms and you're working with a form, what is it that you're putting on this form that you're going to tear one sheet off for yourself and tear one sheet off for someone else? And what is on this form? What details are you capturing exactly? And a lot of times the person that I'm talking to finds it incredibly frustrating, because they're like, I filled out your damn thing. What do you want from me? You wanted me to do user stories. I gave you all of the user stories. I don't have time for this nonsense. So that's the one extreme of being so incredibly vague. The other extreme of being so incredibly detailed, I'll never forget it. A couple of years ago, I was working on a project, and basically they put in there, we want to be able to include attachments to our Salesforce records. And they started specifying an incredibly long list of different file types that they might want to include. So it could be a Microsoft Word document, or an Excel spreadsheet, or a PowerPoint, or a PDF, or a JPEG, or a PNG file, and they started listing over and over all these different file types. And then they started listing the different file sizes that they might want. And not only is it just not needed to go to that level of granularity. It made anyone involved in either creating that document or reviewing that document, it just made it so incredibly burdensome, so frustrating for everyone to look at it, that it was also not helpful. And then it made people feel like, but I gave you all the details. What else could you possibly want? I'm sorry, but I have other questions for you that have nothing to do with what file size or what file attachments you might want to have on that record. Anyway, next question that you had: since people learn differently, are there different levels do you recommend for certain training strategies? Lisa, this is such a powerful question. And my answer is yes. People absolutely have different learning styles. When it comes down to it, the way I see it, when it comes down to it in terms of training people on how to use Salesforce, people often make the mistake of treating it as if it is a spectator sport. Whether you're doing the training in person, classroom style, or you're doing it on-demand training or remote, like through Zoom, it is not a spectator sport. The exact opposite. In order for it to be effective, the people who are being trained need to be logged into the system, doing the same things that are being taught on what I'll call, quote unquote, the big screen. So think of it in terms of classroom style. If I am at the front of the room using a projector and I'm showing people how to use, let's say, list views or how to use global search in Salesforce, they are expected to have their computers, to be logged into Salesforce, to be doing the exact same thing at the same time. As far as I'm concerned, that is the only way to learn how to use any system. If you've never used Facebook before and someone is trying to teach you how to use Facebook or Excel or any system, it doesn't really matter what, just by reading a PowerPoint and not being logged into the system, it's going to be worthless. Just watching YouTube videos and not being logged into the system at the same time, it's going to be completely worthless. You're not going to get anything out of it. It's not going to stick in the brain. So again, my recommendation is to do the training in a way where the users are required to not only have their computers available, they're required to be logged into Salesforce during the training. What I typically do is this. Pre-COVID, most of the training was done classroom style. I'm at the front of the room. Everyone comes in with their computers, and they're expected to be doing the exact same thing. So this way I could pause. People can ask questions. I just, by looking at the facial expressions where people are lost or confused or overwhelmed or bored, I'm able to adjust the training or, prod them. What is the problem? It looks like you're a little bit lost. What's going on? So you can do all of that. With COVID, we started to rely a little bit more on remote training, where you're doing it through Zoom. It is far more challenging to do it through Zoom, especially when it's possible. It's absolutely possible, but it is more challenging, especially when the people that you're trying to train, they're working off of just one screen. If they're working off of two screens, it's completely cool because they can have what I'm showing on my screen on one monitor, and on the other monitor, they can be logged into Salesforce themselves to doing the things that they need to do. So that completely works. By having remote on-demand training, which is most of the type of training that I do, as well as when classroom style doesn't make sense, as well as having people leverage or to repurpose the live training. People are expected to watch the recordings and in one screen and then go be in Salesforce on the other screen, even if it's one monitor. Pause my video so that they can do the thing that I'm showing them how to do, experience what I'm showing them how to experience, like creating a list view, adjusting a list view, creating a new contact, whatever it might be, and then go back to my video to hit play to continue forward. That is typically the best way for people to absorb the information. So they have the visuals, they have the audio of me describing, explaining, and showing here's what we're actually doing. And to the extent that it makes sense to have any written materials for, by the way, you could also just have the transcript of the video appearing on screen as well. So usually what I find that is most impactful. I find that PowerPoints, PDFs, are a complete waste of time. Nobody's going to look at them. In order for them to be effective, they need to be hundreds of pages long. And as soon as someone changes one page layout, as soon as someone introduces one record type, everything is outdated. Who's got the time to go back to review and update all of that stuff? And nobody wants to read a PDF that's more than 25 pages long. Nobody's going to read it. So I found it to be a real challenge. Okay, I see there's another question. Nope. Never mind. It's spam. Okay. We're out of time. We're at the top of the hour. I want to thank all of you for joining. If you have any questions on anything associated to project management, you can feel free to drop me a note, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.